The main task for our media AAS was to create the opening of the film around 3 minutes long. In order to do this, we were placed into groups. I was in a group with 3 other members. The very first thing that our group decided to do was immediately focus on the genre that we wanted. After speaking with our group for a while, it became quite apparent that we wanted to stay away from the horror genre because we didn't feel that we could add anything original to this. We thought our ideas might end up quite cliche, and that is not what we wanted. Although we wanted the enigma of a horror, we didn't want to stick to this genre completely. So we decided that we maybe look at the thriller genre, because this type of movie still has that enigma, that sort of secrecy to it. But there was a lot more we felt we could do with this, a lot more we could work into it, and a lot more original ideas. After looking at the thriller genre, we realised that there were so many subgenres that we needed to focus just in on one, because then our research would be more accurate, we could plan props better, plan everything better. Therefore, we decided, first of all, to look at a psychological thriller. After looking at this genre, we sort of decided that this wasn't really for us because we didn't feel like we could execute it quite as well as we would like. So we moved away from that, regrouped, and decided that we would instead look at a supernatural thriller. This seemed to fit our group a lot better. We had a lot more original ideas and a lot more ideas that seemed to flow. Therefore, we knew immediately that we had to look at the codes and conventions of the genre. In relation to codes and conventions, each member of our group decided that we would individually go and research these codes and conventions in order for each member of our group to get a clear outline of what was included in the film and what wasn't included in the film. So to do this, each member of our group decided to research 5 supernatural thrillers, even delving into the thriller genre just to get a clear outline of that as well. I researched these 5 films and came to the conclusion that there were various codes and conventions that maybe our film should follow, maybe it should leave out. Some of these conventions were the camera techniques. There was a lot of quick cuts included within the films, which I feel that our group adhered to within our own film. We had a lot of quick cuts at the end in order to build that tension aspect. Another camera technique that was in the codes and conventions of the supernatural genre was that of low lighting. I think that we adhered to this as we added a blue preset to each of our shots, which lowered the lighting in them. Another convention that we may not adhere to quite exactly was that of the location. The location within each of the supernatural thrillers that I researched seemed to be of an abandoned old building or an old house. We wanted to sort of stray away from this. We wanted our film to have a little bit of a more modern feel. In order to do this, we found a really, really great location, which we researched before. We went to location before we began filming, took some photographs and made sure that everything would work there. This location was in Jordanstown, and it was an abandoned school building, but the difference was that this building was more modern. It had a more modernised and urbanised feel because of the graffiti surrounding it. We feel that this worked a lot better for our film. We thought that this would sort of stray away from the cliche and add our own original aspect to the film. As well as this, our Satanists didn't particularly adhere to the typical bad guy of the film. They were a lot younger, which I think give our film a lot more uniqueness. Also the makeup, which is usually quite dramatic in a supernatural film, we strayed a little from this code. We'd still give the Satanists like a dramatic sort of look, but we didn't do it with the vampire-ish look. We did it sort of more dead, unearthly sort of feel with the black lines and the bags under our eyes. Again, we looked at this before we went on location. We did a makeup trial and had a few goes of it in order to work out exactly what worked. And as you can see, between the makeup trial and the actual film, there are a few changes, especially with the High Priest, the one who attacks the innocent character. In relation to the innocent character, we really did stick to the codes and conventions through this character. The character is the protagonist. The good character is the protagonist within our film. And we really stuck to these codes and conventions because we made them seem quite innocent and pure. This was done by using a white cardigan, which symbolically represents this purity. As well as researching the actual content within a supernatural thriller, our group knew that we would have to also research the title sequences of each supernatural thriller. I took 3 out of the 5 supernatural thrillers that I had already researched and looked more closely at the title sequence in order to get a clear outline of what comes in the title sequence, what sort of titles were needed, where they would come, how long they would be up for, etc. After taking these title sequences, I did a timeline out for each one, and within each one of them there was a clear distinction that the title of the film would come forth. This is adhered to in our own title sequence, where the title of our film, The Summoning, does come forth, as well as this. The amount of time that each title comes for reflects the supernatural thriller. The fact that the production company is first also reflects the supernatural thriller. Within our title sequence, I feel that we did adhere quite closely to these conventions, as well with the slow flowing painting. This is a reference to Black Swan. It's sort of contextual reference. That's our contextual reference for it. But we decided to go with the pentagram shape. We went with the pentagram shape because after our general research into a supernatural thriller, we realised that there was a lot of godly aspects involved. So we sort of went the opposite of the godly aspects. We sort of went with the devil and the satanic cult. Another way that we adhered to the supernatural genre conventions is through the adaptation of the enigma. An enigma is shown throughout films such as The Others. This is done throughout the title sequence of The Others, whereby there is hand-drawn paintings throughout the opening. Our media product adheres to this convention, as we also have this sort of hand-drawn aspect, along with slow ambient music, another convention of the supernatural genre. The slow ambient music is added in order to create tension and add a bit of suspense. On the other hand, our media product does challenge some of the forms and conventions of the supernatural genre through, for example, the location, where it's a more modernised feel. Although this does challenge the codes and conventions of the supernatural genre, we feel that this is beneficial to our media product, as it helps to add a unique aspect and also create a bit of audience interest. After further research into the supernatural thriller genre, it became apparent that our target audience was a female around the age of 17 to 23. In order to figure this out, our group made up a questionnaire and then distributed this to various genders and also to various age groups. And this questionnaire reflected what our research did. Regarding social groups, it became quite apparent to our group that our film needed to contain a social group which was represented in the target audience. Therefore, we had one of our Satanists as a female aged 17 to 23, which was our target audience. We thought that this social group being involved in our own film would help our product to become more appealing to this target audience. As well as this, another social group that's represented in our film is that of a young male. We thought this young male element would also attract both a male audience and a female audience to our film, as it would give a more sinister aspect, but yet the females would just be attracted to that, as well as it would give the more honest feeling without that quite such a scare factor. Also including this, our innocent character is actually a female aged 17 to 23 as well. But the way that we changed this and the way that we made it seem a younger social group was through the makeup and the costume. Therefore, there is quite a young social group represented, but of very different classes and realms. For example, the Satanists seem to have a more polished feel. They seem quite a lot more professional, whereas our innocent character has a more vulnerable sort of feel, a character that's relatable to our audience, and a character that even an older generation would relate to. We thought that this smaller range of social groups would really show our audience, our direct target with this film, and give them a broader idea of what the following film would continue to be like. Our social groups represent the audience that we would like our media product to be targeted towards, and therefore we thought that this would be the most relatable and therefore had the best impact on our audience. Throughout our research of a supernatural thriller, our group decided to use a variety of media mediums in order to complete our research. I myself use mediums such as Blogger, Pinterest, Glogster and SoundCloud, as well as a number of others. In relation to the technologies we used to create our film, for the majority of our editing we used Final Cut Pro X. This is a technology that we were able to use in our preliminary, so we already had an experience of how this technology worked and how we would use this to create our main test product. We realised when using Final Cut Pro that in our preliminary that it took a lot more time in editing than it actually did in filming. So in our planning we added a lot more time to this. We allowed time for all the editing techniques to be put into practice. Within the technology of Final Cut Pro X, we learned how to use various aspects of this technology. For example, we learned how to slow down the speed of a clip, for example half speed or 25% speed. We also learned how to add transitions, such as fade to colour, which is used a lot within our title sequence. We learned how to detach the audio from each clip, and this would allow us to lower the level of the sound at certain parts, fade the sound out or higher it than it was actually within the filming of the clip. We also used effects on the audio such as the echo delay and the large room to show, sort of add to the mise-en-scène and add to the ambient sound of our film. It created quite a polished feel, quite a professional feel within our film. The easiest part of using the technology was probably the blade cuts and using various cuts and placing our clips in order. That became quite easy with the technology, but I think this was only due to our practice with it within the preliminary. Another technology that we used with our main task was Motion X. We used this media product for our titling because we wanted quite complicated titles. We had quite a clear idea of what our title should look like, with the words and the letters following the paint strokes. Motion X allowed us to do this, although it took quite a while to get used to this technology. It's quite a complicated technology, but the result of using this technology was really good. It did exactly how we wanted, and we learned how to place the titles in the position we wanted using a screenshot, then remove that screenshot and place it in our film. We were able to fit the titles exactly to how our brush strokes were falling, and we think that this made our title sequence quite well executed, and it really fit the theme of the film, and we were really pleased with this result. In relation to the ambient sound and the soundtrack of the film, we felt that this was quite important to use this a good technology for this, because ambient sound seemed to be a major part of what the audience was attracted to within a supernatural thriller. Therefore we used GarageBand to create our music. We added effects to piano, and we had sort of a drum effect underneath. This was all originally done by us, so all the music throughout is original. As well as this, for our title sequence, the actual opening of the film, we used Sibelius, which is a program used for traditional instruments. So for the piano, we thought that this was the best technology to use. Using this variety of technologies, I feel give our piece a much more professional feel, much more authentic feel to the opening of a real supernatural thriller. The variety of technologies were easy to use once you got used to them. But we learned as we progressed, it wasn't an immediate effect of using them straight away. Progressing from our preliminary to our main task, it was clear that there was a lot more time that needed to go into planning and research of our film before we actually began shooting. Unfortunately, in our preliminary, we didn't realise this, and we sort of jumped straight into the filming of the actual media product. This led to a lot of problems that we encountered. For example, we had to refilm a lot of shots because we hadn't planned these shots before. In order to counteract this in our main task, we did plan these shots before. We had a strict storyboard that we followed almost completely, apart from the times where it wasn't possible. We also had a shot list that we knew we had to complete, and this was brought on to the film set. Another encounter that we sort of encountered within our preliminary was that of the actors. Within our preliminary, the actors weren't completely reliable. They didn't show up on time, and they didn't know what they were supposed to bring and what they weren't supposed to bring. In our main task, we tried to counteract this by we kept in contact with all our actors throughout the entire process of shooting, even before shooting. We also made them aware that no changes could be made to their appearance, as in our preliminary, unfortunately, one of our actors had their hair cut throughout, and it's not completely noticeable, but it is a slight change, and we knew that this couldn't happen within our main task. As well as this, we knew that our time management had to be a lot better, because after using Final Cut Pro in our preliminary, we realised that a lot more time was needed for the editing of the piece than there was for the actual filming. Therefore, we filmed the title sequence first at a separate date, began editing this before we actually began filming the opening of our film and not the title sequence. This meant that we had already progressed in the editing process before the rest of the filming was completed, and I think this led to our main task being within the time constraints that we had. Another problem that we discovered in our preliminary was that during the dialogue section of our preliminary, there was an echo, and this was due to the large room. In order to counteract this within our main task, we decided to record the audio separately, and also detach the audio from the clips and mess around with the volumes and that there, which we feel give our main task a much more professional effect than our preliminary did, and we believe that we did progress quite a lot from our preliminary in relation to the shots, the mise-en-scène, even the dialogue itself. What was said in the dialogue was a lot more like the opening of a film than our preliminary was.